Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Sarah Rosalia bin Saulila. So I am alumni of Yayasan Sukarela Mahasiswa from Malaysia. So today I am very delighted to have both of you guys here as our panel for today about this 10th episode of Unpacking IVCO 2023 blog post. So today we are going to have a special chat to discuss IVCO 2023 blog post topics and make it accessible for everyone, especially those who don't have the time to read it all. So our special guest today, Dr. Chris Malora, who humbly us call him as a Chris Malora, and also Taibat Hussein, who wrote Youth Volunteering and Power, Challenging the Divide Between Volunteerism and Activism, and we are going to break it down in this interview. So let's start. So without further ado, would you like to introduce yourself and say hello to the audience? Anyone?
Okay.
Yeah, sure.
Yes. Thank you, Sarah. My name is Chris. I'm a researcher and I research youth social action and learning. I'm currently based at the Goldsmiths College at the University of London. So nice to be here.
Thank you, Chris. All right. There you go.
Hi, everyone. And thank you so much, Sarah. And thank you for having me here. I'm Taibat Hussein, and I'm a PhD candidate at the University of East Anglia. My research interest is focused on education, gender, and youth empowerment. And currently, I'm looking at how gender-based violence takes place within the schools. I'm from Nigeria, but based in the UK because of my studies. So yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, it was smooth. Okay, I think for now it's morning, right, in UK, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, good morning, and thank you for having the time with us. So now, shall we moving along to the session for the first question? So shall we start with Chris first? Is it fine? Okay. So my first question was based on your blog post. How does the article challenge the traditional distinction between volunteering and activism, particularly in the context of young people's action?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think what we tried to in the article, Taibat and I was to, first of all, try to describe what this traditional divide looks like, because often activism and volunteering are seen as different forms of social action. So volunteering is often seen as maintaining the status quo. So you volunteer for an organization and you're trying to deliver what the organization asks you. But activism is different because it tries to challenge power hierarchies. It tries to challenge, who gets to say and decide certain decisions in our social processes, right? But what we're trying to argue is that it's not very different because there are forms of volunteering that also challenges the way the world works. So we've seen that a lot during the COVID-19 pandemic, which we write a little bit about in the blog post, where young people are volunteering or providing services for those who have very little or are impacted very significantly by the pandemic, and their acts of volunteerism was actually seen as a way for them to challenge the fact that their governments, for example, or other state actors are not doing their best in terms of responding to the social needs that have arisen during the pandemic. So the differences between volunteering and activism blurs very much, especially in contexts where there's conflict, there's war, for instance, or in places where there's very restricted and narrow civil society, that any act of social action is almost always seen as political, right? And I think that's sort of the point that we're trying to sort of drive in the article. And I know Taibat, for instance, have had experience of this as a youth volunteer and activist and leader in Nigeria. Taibat, did you want to add anything on that?
Yeah, thank you very much, Chris. And the context that you've provided is really great. For me, I think if you ask any volunteer why they are doing what they are doing, they will tell you it's because they want to impact the desired change. So they are not just doing it because they want to spend their time or they want to build their CV. It's always with the intention that I want to bring about change. So I think I find it quite, surprising when you try to reduce that much of intention and effort into just the provision of service. Let's just use your time because you have free time, because you are on holiday, because you're on vacation. No, it's about something bigger. So I know Chris might probably say, hold up, but I think that the old term volunteer reduces the intention of young people to bring about the desired change. So probably the concept of volunteer itself has, a bit of, I don't know, it's a bit shaky. The foundation is a bit shaky because you're reducing young people to just the provision of service. Meanwhile, young people are doing what they are doing with the intention to bring about, that positive change in their community.
If I can just add to that, Sarah, and I just want to say that you really hit the nail on the head there, Taibat, that volunteering is also change oriented. And I think that's sort of one of the main point where we're trying to say in the article that young people's volunteering could lead to a certain form of social change. And that change could be about trying to reposition their roles in the society, saying that, oh, we're not just young people who don't know anything, who don't have expertise because we're too young, but we can actually build movements from the ground. We know that a lot of social movements are being conducted by people who are volunteering themselves, right? Volunteers actually drive a lot of social movements, and a lot of movements rely on volunteers to be able to continue. So I think we need to have that sort of clear understanding of what else a volunteer can do and can accomplish. So, for instance, there's a lot of conversations around volunteering is not just, as you said, Taibat, volunteering is not just about service delivery, right? Volunteering is also about, you volunteer to get your voice heard. So volunteering as campaigning. There's also a lot of people, young people, who volunteer their time, even though they don't have a lot of time or they don't have a lot of resources, but they volunteer what they have to shape policy making in their society. So you have in the Philippines, for instance, we have local government units and we have a youth council who are almost working for free to try and shape local policy making and try to design the kind of development that they want in their societies or in their local communities. So I think we need to be more aware, and I just want to build on Taibat's point that we need to be a bit more aware of the diverse forms of volunteering that are existing, that may not be always recognized, but are indeed existing in many societies.
I may say that was a very compact explanation and elaboration. As me myself also, I think I am agree with you guys' opinion about that, since I am also a volunteering and I grew up, and to get who I am right now, volunteering did teach me a lot, because I think it's a very compact reality aid of life, of how you have to go through from uh, bottom to top. So yeah, it really shows and exactly and details how it looks like actually. So shall we move to the next question? So my next question would be, how does the article actually challenge the traditional distinction? Oh, sorry. My next question was, can you provide examples from the article that illustrate how volunteering by young people can serve as a foundation or broader activist efforts and challenge power hierarchy? Anyone?
If I should come in here, because that's what I do on a day-to-day basis. And for me, I think the foundation of anything, is based on the ability to mobilize a group of young people. Even if you consider yourself an activist and there's this issue that you want to bring to light, you can't get it done without mobilizing young people who are the power force. Although we term them volunteers, but I feel they play the most instrumental too in whatever change you're trying to achieve. Let me cite a very widely example in Nigeria, which is the Not Too Young to Run bill, where, young people decide that, they should reduce the age of presidency and governorship so that more young people could contest for that role. And at that point, it sounds like something that is not achievable, because the people at the realm of government are older people. I'm saying older, I'm talking 60 years, 65 years, 50 years. And someone somewhere are bringing about a bill to get, 35, 30-year-old people to come on board. But the strategy that was used was mobilizing young people across the state to go into the Senate House, to do a walkathon, to go on radio, to come out in mass numbers. And it was huge. It was amazing. And I think it's the number, the youth power, let me use that word, the youth volunteer power was what got the attention. And I think it was one of the most instrumental tool that brought about the bill being passed at both the national level and the state level. So that is on a national scale. But there's other example on the local level. For me now, I also mobilize young people at my community level, and we do a lot of things, maybe calling out, government on issues, bringing gender-based issues to attention. And, the little things that I was doing at the time, I never knew was sending signal to, policymaker, to government officials. I didn't know I was even taking aware of until I wrote an open letter. And I just did the letter because, of course, it's part of what I do. I was like, let's push this out, whether they see it or not, put it out there. And it was surprising when I saw a reply. It wasn't even sent to me. I just saw it publicized online. I'm like, wow. So it's just good to say that volunteers are the powerhouse. There is no activism without young people, without mobilizing young people, without the volunteers. And I think I'll start not using the word volunteers because it kind of just tell young people that, I want you for your time. I want you for your service. I want you for your expertise, without acknowledging that beyond that, I want you for what you can bring to this change. So I feel youth power is what I'm tilting towards more than, referring to, I have a group of volunteers and things like that. Okay, I'm going to stop here, Chris.
No, that's a great example. And yes, maybe we need to review our language, what we use in terms of describing young people's work, right? And youth power might be more encompassing with the encompassing of the work of young people. What I also wanted to add to that is volunteering has also become a machinery for a lot of youth activist movements. And I guess what I've also noticed is that there's a lot of coalition building. And I know I'm going to bring this back to you, Taibat, because I know you're part of several coalitions. And I know what I've been seeing is that local organizations, like based in Nigeria, the Philippines, or whatever, maybe in Malaysia as well, would come together in a global coalition, like the Global Campaign for Education, for instance, the Global Partnership for Education. You have the Global Student Forum. All of these organizations that are trying to bring young people's voices and acts and sort of power together to make a stronger voice in terms of policy making or of shifting policy change, for example. And I know, Taibat, you're part of these coalitions, and I don't know how your experience is like in terms of these groups.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. I think one amazing one is the Global Campaign for Education, like you've said, and it's just very interesting to see how intentional organizations are seeing young people. They are meaningfully engaging young people, because I think they are realizing now, coming to the realization that we can't do anything without them. And we've passed the age of saying, oh, we'll decide for them. It's time to start bringing them on board, getting their ideas, their youth expertise, if we want to move forward or if we want to achieve change. And for instance, now in September, there's this Act for SDG whereby this organization kind of mobilized young people across the world. And in Nigeria, there's also such mobilization because they fund an organization that I'm a part of. And the whole idea is to mobilize young people in their huge number to campaign for this SDG, to also, to remind, because sometimes government policymakers forget to remind them that we've still got time to achieve the SDG. And I think it's brilliant. And also just, I think 3 days ago, an organization sought opinions of young people because they realized that they need to meaningfully engage young people. And then they reached out and be like, Taiba, we are devising this advisory strategy. How we feel we are not meaningfully engaging young people and we want to do better. How can we do better? What are your opinions? And I had to tell them the hard truth. That's not for this. But it's just, I think it's good to acknowledge the fact that a lot of organizations are beginning to realize that they can't do much without the power of young people. And I think that that's remarkable. That's like a beginning. And that's something that to look forward to.
Well, I must say, I adore your mindset so much. Okay, not everyone could be that flexible to have that initiative and the effort to do all those things that nobody wanted to do. Yeah, if it's not us, who does? So yeah, I do adore it so much. Okay, next we'll go to the questions. How has the landscape of youth organizations and social action evolved, and why is it becoming more challenging to separate volunteering and activism? Would anyone wanted to elaborate it?
Yeah, maybe I start and then Tabat, of course, you're free to add. I mean, the thing that I find quite dominant or, an emerging sort of idea in academic literature, because I'm a sort of researcher, but also I've been seeing that with the young people I work with, is that there's now different ways by which young people are engaged in political and social processes. So previously, I mean, if you're going to look at, and this might be different in different countries, but there's a lot of young people's work are attached to organizations. So young people would join organizations, for instance, for them to participate in different social and political processes. But now what we're seeing is that a lot of the citizenship and activism and volunteering that young people do are embedded in their everyday lives. So they don't have to be in a formal organization. So they can do that. Some of them choose veganism, for instance. Some of them choose to cycle to work as sort of their contribution to the climate crisis or to solving the climate crisis. We have people like Taibat and many others who are starting their own organization and trying to challenge traditional ways of working that have happened in the past in many organizations that are sort of quite established. So they're trying to say that, no, actually, we want to do things differently. And I've been seeing that as well in the Philippines, right? So I think we need to be aware of the changing dynamics of how young people enact change or shape change, that it's not always through organizations. And sometimes we're seeing, a lot of volunteer organizations are seeing, a lot of young people are no longer, volunteering. But that's not really the case. Young people are not volunteering in your organization, but there's a whole host of other ways by which young people volunteer and a whole host of ways by which young people try to change. And sometimes it's not visible, as what Taibat was saying earlier, because they are in these pockets of activities and activism in their own communities, in their own societies, that sometimes may not be visible to policymakers or to other stakeholders. I don't know, Taibat, if you agree with that or same observation.
Yes. I think just to build on what you've said, that when organization says young people are not volunteering with them, I think that's just interesting to see, because there was a time when young people are the ones going to this organization to beg to volunteer, if you get what I mean. Like, let me do something for you. Let me just be part of what you're doing. And I think it's just evolved to the understanding that you don't have to be part of any formal organization with their bureaucracy, with their, reductionist. Because when you volunteer with an organization, they feel that they are doing you favor, like they are the one adding value to you. You're not adding value to them. So it's so easy for them to overuse you, to overwork you, to not pay you, to underpay you, and to qualify everything under volunteer. And then they'll come and say, oh, you volunteering is the experience that matters, is the, but it's also a way of them underestimating young people. And I feel that as young people now, we've evolved, we've recognized the need that we don't have to be part of an organization. We only have to be part of a community to effect a change. So we are tilting towards, if there is no organization, I can do this myself. I can go to the community. That's why young people are brave enough to go to any community, to talk to the leaders, or to go to any schools, to decide to teach them about anything, even with the under resources that they have. So I think, Chris, it's so interesting. And I feel next time, if any organization says that, try to remind them that, what is the strategy you have in place for young people? What are you doing for them? And are you just seeing them as service giver? And how are you going to add value to them? How are you adding value to them? I think it's really interesting. And young people, we are not going to be we're not going to be underused again. I think that's the old global agenda. We are coming out full force, powerful, like we matter, our voice matter, what we can do matter, and you have to listen to us, and it's just remarkable, brilliant.
Yeah, and you know what? I mean, that's the whole challenge, right? For volunteer involving organizations, for large or even smaller non-government organizations at a global scale, but also nationally, right? How do we, and this is a question for people at IVCO as well, how do you shape exactly the question it's about, how do you shape your policies? How do you create strategies to involve young people, knowing that young people's activism and volunteering has been changing for many, many years, right? So how do you, instead of saying that, yeah, we're open, come and join us, I think it should be the other way around, trying to see what can we offer, exactly, Taibat, what can we offer young people, and how can we change our ways so that we can engage young people in meaningful ways. I think that's the question. Sometimes it's not always just about participation, but meaningful participation. And I agree with Taibat. One thing that I've been seeing in my own research is that young people are definitely pushing back against very tokenistic ways of engagement. They don't like this, and they can recognize this. So this is something that I'm very impressed with. I was also a youth activist in the past, and I'm a little bit more radical in terms of trying not to partner with the government, trying not to partner with anybody else, because young people, it's just us and all that. But now young people are more flexible. They know how to partner with organizations, but they can also smell if organizations are just doing it in tokenistic ways. So that's why it's lovely to hear Taibat saying all these things, because these are true, right? That young people can feel that organizations are using them or underusing them. And if it doesn't match with their own advocacy, their own vision, their own visions of change, and their own sort of passions and advocacy, then I don't think it's going to work out, and it's going to be a loss for the organization to not harness this power of young people.
But do you have anything to add more?
Well, I think Chris did a job, bringing all together. Thank you.
Okay. So I must say that everything that we have, like each of the movements regarding either the volunteerism or either the activism, their movement has to be parallel to the dynamic of change, as what Chris mentioned before, because the dynamic of change is very, very important. because you have to know what to offer and what the benefits of it. And I think it was the highlight of all. And also, not to forget about what Taizat mentioned before, some of the youth are not suitable or not preferred to work with the organizations because some of them might just have, that hyper energy that they wanted to contribute. So they prefer to use another channel instead of being in organization because they might feel that they have a limitation to do everything in organization. So that's why they prefer to like work by themselves. So yeah, it's very insightful. So next question. As it mentioned in the blog post, young people creatively and skillfully utilize social media and digital platforms to amplify concerns globally. So it through Twitter songs, online campaigns, hashtags, and interactive online exhibits. So from there, what roles does digital technology and social media play in the evolving dynamics of young people's activism and volunteering efforts? All right. Anyone?
No, just let me jump into that. I would say technology has empowered young people, and that is the leverage we have against adult allies, because most of them are trying to catch up, but we are already, we've mastered the art of using social media to generate positive engagement, to be honest. And I think over the years, it's been a very critical tools for youth activists and youth volunteers, because when you can get the attention of your maybe decision makers, local policy makers, just go on social media. By the time there are like 1,000 tweets, by the time everywhere is talking about that issue, somehow it's going to get to them. And the next, you will see them issuing a press release or a press statement. They are pressured. They were pressured into it. If without social media, that might have been impossible because you do not have access to the government office. You can't just go there. Even if you go there, nobody's going to open the door or listen to you. So I think the social media has empowered young people, provided a sort of virtual space for them to mobilize, to mobilize their voice, increase their change, and then push for change, to be honest. So it's been remarkable. I think it's one of the most instrumental tools for young people these days to bring about change in their respective communities. Chris?
Yeah, that's a really good example, and I agree completely. And I think apart from social media being a tool for outward campaigns, you use social media, for instance, when you campaign and you mobilize. It's also about what I've found in my research is that technology and digital means has also been used by young people to strengthen internal connections. And this was particularly true during COVID, where a lot of the in-person stuff have stopped, and it has changed the dynamics of activism. So you have WhatsApp, Zoom, and all of this technology and whatever else to keep the connections between young people. But one of the things I think that that perhaps we have not really delved with because of space in the article is this issue of the digital divide. And I think we really need to talk about it, that because sometimes technology is seen as the silver bullet, that it's going to change and going to make everything better, or that it's going to make activism this whole new world. But actually, there's a lot of young people who are unable to access digital tools, who do not have enough infrastructure, do not have the money for data to be able to go and talk in this, even in this spaces where we think having a Zoom meeting is more accessible, but only for particular groups of people. We need to be aware that there's also divisions, right, in terms of where you are in the world, for instance, whether you're in rural area, urban area, etc. And there's also a lot of difference. I know that there's certain young people who are more adept in certain types of technologies and others who are more adept in others. Like me, I'm according to Philippine laws, I'm still a young person because I'm only 33. But actually, I don't know how to do TikTok and stuff like this. And a lot of more younger people are more adept with these types of things. And I know that TikTok is a very strong sort of means of activism and of movement building. So digital divide is important, and it's something that we need to address, and it's something that people need to recognize, especially when we begin to think about involving young people. So if you're an IVCO, for instance, or if you're an organization who wants to use technology to engage young people, you need to be very aware of the challenges that some of these young people face just by getting into the Zoom room with you to be able to talk to you. I think we need to be very aware of that. Would you, Taibat, I know that this is also an issue that you've been, working on, digital divide and all that. So I wondered if you want to add something.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. I did write an article about this, and it's just a realization that, of course, I've acknowledged the remarkable power of technology, but then we shouldn't lose focus of the millions of, young people out there who still do not have this access because they cannot afford it, because it's not accessible, and I think it's something that needs to, I know a lot of people are working on it, but I feel that it's easy to just discard those numbers because the numbers online is huge enough. I feel because we have a lot of young people already, it's easy to assume that that's all young people. Forgetting, just like Chris said, that we were not able to talk much about that in the blog, forgetting that there are still thousands and hundreds and millions of young people who are excluded, who do not have access. Now imagine if those young people in their numbers are connected, have access. It's just incredible the contributions they can make to their community, to the world at large. And another thing I just also wanted to say is the opportunities that technology provide for young people. It allows you to be here. I've been in the UK for more than 2 years, and I'm still actively involved in my community back in Nigeria. And it's just incredible how I could still be part of something huge while I'm away from my community. And I think for me, that's one of the, benefits of technology, and how it keeps me going, being able to still volunteer, being able to still champion for change in my community while I'm not there.
Do you want to add some more, Chris? Or that's all? Okay. So, well, that's very beautiful because it's true that technologies and all the access we have right now is a very expressly when it comes to like spreading the news, spreading all those information, and actually it connects the dots. It connects the dots between the people here and there, across the sea and everywhere. But then it became a very disadvantageous for those persons that are staying in the rural areas that have a limitations through the network. But yeah, we may say that the main sources right now is the technology and, of course, the social media itself, especially the TikTok right now that have been going, trending all over the world. So yeah.
Sarah, this thought just popped into my head, and just allow me to say it because it's very important. And it's about how young people are also using technology in a negative way. And this is often through fake news, sharing fake news, creating anxiety, reporting things that are untrue, or discarding or disregarding things that's happened in their huge numbers. I think this is also a great disadvantage to volunteering and activism, because young people might come online and say, "Oh, I was aroused by this person," and other young people in their huge numbers, start campaigning, "Oh, bring justice to the person, do all this." in the long run, you realize that the young person has done it out of joke or retaliation, and it makes you wonder all the efforts that's been put into this, where did they go? And you will see governments saying that, oh, how true is this? It doesn't happen. This has happened before, and it turns out to be fake news. This has happened before. So it's technology also has a way, especially social media, to discard the huge work that young people are doing and the kind of change they would like to make. I just wanted to make that point because it's becoming rampant now. Fake news, fake stories, fake experience, and just, it's just ridiculous. Don't capture that.
Yes, indeed. Because it seems like we've been regulating with the social medias every day, every single second that we're living in. There's no boundaries in the news. So you cannot know whether that was the fake news or a truthful news. So that was a very, disadvantageous for us to know whether the sources is truth or cannot be true. Okay. So next question was okay. I think this question is for Dr. Chris. So, in what ways do volunteering and activism complement each other, and how do they contribute to young people's collective power for change?
I think, we've had a long conversation today, and I think a lot of that sort of responds to that question that indeed volunteering and activism are two forms of social actions that are very much linked with each other and are ways for young people to really sort of, enhance their voices and make their voices heard in many different spaces. I think one thing that I'd like to emphasize is that young people's social action needs to be recognized by a lot of volunteer involving organizations. They need to be highlighted. One thing that is important in terms of the links between volunteering and activism is both of them could be political in nature. So both of them could be change oriented. And I think this is something that we've discussed in the article that, in some places, the very act of volunteerism is an act of activism. I had a person, I had an opportunity to interview a young woman in a currently in a country where there's conflict, and she was saying that the very act of me going out in the street and volunteering to the causes that I am passionate about is political. It is a form of activism because I operate in a society where the civil society is so narrow. So any act of activism by young people or volunteering by young people is actually an activist work. And actually there's a lot of responses to young people's volunteering that are very politicized. So in the Philippines, I remember there was a time when a lot of young people were organizing to provide food packets in urban areas to those who do not have sort of opportunity or resources to eat and whatever and all those stuff. And a lot of their work was politicized. So the government was telling them, oh, why are you trying to challenge the government by providing services that we are supposed to provide? Or this is a propaganda against the government. So you should not do this. And a lot of them have been policed, a lot of them have been criminalized, have been detained, which is really surprising because what they're doing is just really providing services to those who need them. So I think we need to be very aware of these particular dynamics and the fact that young people's work could also be highly politicized, especially in conflict-ridden areas and in places where the civil society is very narrow.
Okay, all right. Actually, that was true. It indeed happened in the reality because people miscommunication, like misunderstood the concept or the intention of them doing that because yeah, they thought it would be a propaganda, but actually what they do is just helping people, like make it easier and helping out people instead of leaving them alone and stranded that way. Yeah, it's very insightful. So, okay, Talwa, we have you. Okay, I thought we lost you already. Okay, so my last question would be How does the article emphasize the importance of meaningful youth participation in shaping social change and influencing global agendas? And what are the implications for policymakers and organizations? The floor is yours. Anyone wanted to answer? Taiwan?
I'll just do like a quick one, and then Chris could round it up. I feel the whole essence of the article is trying to say to organization and anybody that cares to listen that there is no dichotomy, between volunteering and activism. The line is blurry. You can't really be an activist without being a volunteer. Let me put it out. I don't think it works that way, especially in my experience. I've seen a lot of, influential activists in my community spend years volunteering, So I feel volunteering is like a path that you have to keep taking to bring about change. And it's just when you get, it's like, okay, a PhD, okay, let me say, or you start like an undergrad volunteering. And I think the PhD is the activist. It's still the same thing. The intention is the same. The change is the same. The contribution is the same. It's just the terminology. It's just the qualification you get at the end of it. And that is me talking from experience, which might be a bit different from, research or academic people or the theoretical work. But I feel it's unjust when you decide to see young people that are volunteers as just service provider. And I think I've been also I've experienced that before. It's not nice, especially when it's a cause that you're passionate about, when it's an organization that you admire a lot and you're putting, not because it's convenient for you. Most times young people do what they do because it's not even convenient. Even taking out time is not. I have a lot to do. I have schoolwork, I have studying, and when you're not recognized or when you're just discarded, particularly when it comes to the full staff have access to this benefit, but because you're volunteers, you do not have access to it. Meanwhile, but the full staff and the volunteers are doing the same thing. So I think it's just something, and I'm really glad that a lot of organizations are beginning to rethink their strategy of engaging young people, and they are tilting towards meaningful engagement. They are coming to realize that we can continue with the traditional way. These young people, this Gen Z, this millennial, they are not the same as the ones that we've been working with. So we really need to respect them. We need to trust them. We need to empower them, and we need to see them as partners, So I think that's why it's also important to look at young people as partners in change, not just as service provider or not just as, a tool that we can leverage on. So what the whole essence of that article is saying is, I think it's all about challenging the thinkings of organization to sit back, to examine how they've been engaging young people in what aspect, and to start to think about how to meaningfully engage young people and see them as a force to reckon with, as a partner in bringing about change. Thank you. Over to you, Chris.
Perfect, Taibat. That was really, really powerful words. Maybe I just want to focus on what the implications of some of these for youth involving organizations, or especially for IVCOs, volunteering cooperating organizations. I want to say that first and foremost, we need to understand that young people's work, activism, and volunteering, it's evolving. So it's changing. We're seeing now more individualized form of activism and volunteering. So the question for organizations is, how do you respond to that? How do you shape your strategies in terms of engagement to make sure that it is in line with what young people want and what young people do? I think we need to change systems, and we need to change our thinking in terms of engaging with young people. Context here is very important. So I think that's one thing that we've implicitly said during the duration of this interview, but also to say that really explicitly that youth volunteering, youth activism, and youth participation is so different in many different countries and in many different communities. Sometimes it depends on where you work. So in the Philippines, I know of youth activists who are doing activist work but do not want to be called activists, right? Because they're saying it's too political, right? But we are doing activist work, but we don't want to be called activists because we might, be red tagged by the government, we might be policed, etc. So we also need to be aware of those. That I know that the line is blurry, but in some circumstances, young people would want to be differentiated only because of the loadedness of the term that is being used. The second thing that I'd like to emphasize is I think, and I don't know if Taibat would agree with me, but I think we have now moved past this idea that we need to involve young people. I think that is something that a lot of organizations know that they could not operate without young people. But the question is, how do you engage with young people in meaningful ways? I think that's the key word. What is meaningful youth participation, and how does it look like in your organization? If you have an activity, you have young people come in and attend, is that participation? Right? Or when you have a particular event and you ask young people to, for example, help you set up the stage or deliver boxes and whatever, is that participation? Or if you have an online event and you ask young people to make designs, etc., or to host and whatever, is that participation? Because there are other forms. There are organizations that have embedded young people in their advisory boards, in governing bodies, where young people have a vote in the strategy of the organization. Organizations like the Global Campaign for Education, they have youth representatives within the governing body of the organization. That is way different than other forms of participation. So we need to think of ways of how we engage young people meaningfully, understanding what they want and what the activities that they do. And finally, I'd like to have a bit of a comment on the importance of partnerships, right? And I agree with Taibat that partnering with young people is important. And a lot of people use now the term intergenerational. What I think is important is that, based on my research and the conversations I've heard with the young people, is that young people don't want to erase adults in the world. It's not like we don't want to deal with adults anymore. The point is we have to have intergenerational solidarity, but we need to be aware of the intergenerational inequalities that are existing in our society. I don't know, Sarah and Taibat, if you agree with me, but we still operate in a very adult-dominated world. A lot of our processes are still adult-dominated. A lot of the spaces where we work are still adult-dominated. And we need to recognize that power hierarchy, and we need to recognize that inequality, because without recognizing and addressing that, it's impossible to create solidarity with young people if we are blind of the issues that young people are facing and the inequalities that young people are facing because of our adult-dominated world. So it's a very complex issue, but I guess it goes to that point, right? How do we create these connections and intergenerational solidarity across different generations when we want to work with young people? And yeah, thank you very much, I guess, for this time to discuss this with Taibat and, of course, you, Sarah.
Taibat, you want to add some more?
No, just excellent. Close it. I'm so,
okay.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. So I must say that was very informative elaboration. Okay, I received a lot, and thank you. So I must say that from that I have to conclude about the intergenerational. That was a very what a word for today. That would be the key word for today, lah. The intergenerational. So from that, I have to say there is no right time for a change, but it requires the efforts and initiatives, and also the mindset of individual is the game changer of everything, especially in volunteerism and also activism. So I guess that was all the time we had today for the interview. What an insightful conversation we've had today on youth volunteering and power, challenging the divide between volunteerism and activism. So, nevertheless, I would like to express my gratitude for both of our panelists today, Chris Malora and also Taibat Hussein, for your time. Especially now it's morning, right? So, thank you. And to our viewers and listeners, don't forget to explore the conference website at www.ivco2023.org to read the blog post and more. So if you haven't registered yet, this is your time and grab this opportunity to be a part of the IVCO 2023 Kuala Lumpur. Stay tuned on the next episode and bye.